Broken shock shaft, leaky shocks, this video is for you. I broke my shock shaft. Traxxas was happy enough to send me some extra ones. Here's a good diagram of the shock. Not a whole lot of tools are needed. 7/8 inch wrench, 7mm wrench, 2.5mm Allen, your desired weight of shock oil, plastic cup, and some pliers for holding the broken shock shaft and taking the lock nut off. If you had your broken shock shaft, this part's for you. Go ahead and put your 7/8 inch wrench on there, pop the tension and remove the bottom. Once you unscrew that bottom, it's going to lift right off. If you still have the bottom of the shock on there, you're going to have to switch around the order. Basically, you'll take the piston off and the lock nut first. But if you have a broken shock shaft, you can just slide this whole bottom part off. First, dump your oil out so you don't set your shock down and pour it everywhere. You want to save it in a plastic cup. Unless you're changing the shock oil, then it doesn't really matter. You can just dump it out, dispose of it properly. Once you have the bottom taken off, if it's broken, you can just slide it right out. Otherwise, you're going to have to take the nut off. So right here, I'm holding it with pliers, take the nut off. And then look, the bottom, you have that retaining clip. It just pushes out with with an Allen wrench. Real easy. Then use that same Allen wrench, push the bushing out. Be careful when you're poking around in there. You don't want to scratch the O-ring that's sitting in there. That O-ring is important for holding the oil, making sure it doesn't leak out. So if you're having leaky shocks, you can dip that O-ring in some mineral oil. Make sure it's coated nice and good to develop a good seal. Once you have the bushing out, gently use your Allen wrench to push the O-ring out. And you'll see him when he comes out. He's a happy fellow. Look at that. He's been eating good. Now with your new shock shaft, you're going to put it all on backwards. It's important to disassemble the bottom half because you don't want to shove a brand new shock shaft through there. That O-ring's compressed, so the threads might tear it or might nick it a little bit. Put the bottom on, then the O-ring, then the bushing. Now hold the bottom of the assembly and push the top down with your thumb on the top of the bushing and then throw the clip in. Now you got your washer. Put the washer on first, then your piston, then your lock nut. Tighten that lock nut down good and snug. If you look at the piston, you'll see there's some holes in there. Those holes are what the oil, the mineral oil, the shock oil, that's what it's flowing through. And the amount of holes, the size of those holes, in combination with the shock oil, is what's giving you your resistance on compression. The spring itself is what's how fast it's going to rebound, but the number of holes and the size of them is what regulates the compression speed. If you look at the top of the shock cap, you can see the bladder in the top of there. So after you screw the bottom on, unscrew the top. Now you dump your oil back in. Work that shock shaft up and down. Get those air bubbles out of there. You'll see that the air bubbles are going to want to come to the top nice and slow. But pour oil in, work the shock shaft up and down, get the oils to the top. Put more oil in, make sure no bubbles are developing. Set it to the side if you have to. Let it sit for 10 or 15 minutes or as long as you can stand. Get all that air bubbles to the top. You don't want any air in there. Now you pull it all the way down. Now I'm going to top it off with some more shock oil. You want it filled up all the way to the top. And no matter how much you save, once you pour it back in, it's never going to be enough. So you're always going to have to top it off. There you go. Now get that shock cap, put them back on there. Screw them about 2 turns in, then stop. Yeah, there you go. Now stop. Compress that shock shaft. You'll see me sliding it up with my hand. What you're doing is you want to avoid any pressure buildup. So you slide it all the way to the top, then screw that cap down while you're holding it in. You'll see that tiny hole. That's the weep hole. All your excess oil is going to flow out of there. that's good. That means you got a nice, sealed shock, no air in there. Once again, just screw it hand tight. Once it's hand tight, you can give that shock shaft some more action. And you'll see, even doing it perfectly, once you compress the shock shaft, it's going to push out just a little bit with some tiny bit of positive pressure. You really don't want it to stick out any more than that, but that's acceptable. If it's poking it out all the way, you're going to want to redo it and try again. Throw that spring on there with the shock shaft all the way extended. Throw your bottom clip on there. You're almost done. With that bottom clip in place and the spring in its spot, throw that last screw in there. And that's it. You're done. If you have any questions, just post them up in the comment section. Good luck and have fun.